Okay, we're recording. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Allison and I work on the Youth Initiatives team here at SAIT. Today I will be speaking with Fiona. Fiona is a past summer camps leader and a recent SAIT alumni from the WET program, which stands for Welding Engineering Technologist, or in short form, becoming a welding inspector. And so thank you for joining us today, Fiona.
Hi.
Okay, perfect. So the goal for today is to give our viewers an understanding of what a welding engineering technologist does and how someone who may be interested in this field can become a welder. So we'll just jump right into the questions.
Okay, awesome.
Perfect. So just to start off, can you explain what your educational background is? And yeah.
Okay, so I came to Calgary straight out of high school in grade 12. I applied to the Welding Engineering Technology program at SAIT, or as Allison called it, the WET program for short. So through there, I just had my regular prereqs in grade 12, things like academic level math, physics, sciences, things like that, nothing too fancy or extravagant. And then straight from there, I was admitted into the program at SAIT. And I spent 2 years there studying welding engineering technology over the course of 4 semesters, learning everything about welding industries, pressure industries, kind of like a lot of avenues that a graduate could take once you've graduated from the program. And the program is internationally accredited. So the options are really endless all over the world through the background of the program, and the teachers and instructors are great at explaining these things and kind of like giving you pointers on how your educational background can take you from SAIT to across the world, or even in Calgary, anywhere really. Yeah.
Amazing. And so did you know that you wanted to do this in high school, and did you kind of align all of your courses with the requirements of what you needed for the WET program? Or was it kind of later on that you decided that this is what you wanted to do?
It was actually really late on in my high school years. So I'm from Nova Scotia, and in Nova Scotia we have 4 years of high school. Pretty sure it's the same all across the country, but starting in grade 9, I knew that I wanted to do, or I thought that I wanted to be an X-ray technician at a hospital, something like that. That goal and forming my classes in high school, starting in grade 10 through grade 12, all revolved around becoming an X-ray technologist or someone who worked in like sonogram, things like that in a hospital. So I aligned like chemistry, physics, and courses that would be relevant to getting into those programs. It wasn't actually until November of grade 12 I came to visit SAIT in Calgary, and I realized, okay, I really like this program, but I'm not sure if I want to do it anymore, because a week before I came to SAIT to visit for like an orientation, I actually shadowed at a local hospital here in Nova Scotia. And I realized that, hey, maybe I didn't think of all the outcomes that could be in a day of the life of a person who takes x-rays or ultrasounds at a hospital. And so when I arrived at SAIT, I still looked at the program, the medical radiology program there, and saw how great it was, knew it was world renowned, but still inside was kind of like, hey, this probably isn't for you. You didn't really enjoy your week at the hospital. And I'm very grateful I did get to shadow, and I recommend people do shadow jobs no matter what the career field is, because I thought I had all the answers, or I had a great idea of what a day in the life would look like. And then when I got to the hospital, it was a complete 180 to what I thought it would be. And it really opened my eyes. So not canceling trip to Calgary and SAIT, I still went the following week, and I was shown the program that I was there to take the orientation in. And career counselor at SAIT actually showed me the Welding Engineering Technology program, because I was in 4-H as a kid throughout Nova Scotia from age 12 until, at that time I was 18. I studied welding in the 4-H program and took it as a project. So aside from my high school, I just did that for kind of like a hobby extracurricular. And I always liked welding. I loved welding. everything to do with it, but I had a mindset that it wasn't for girls, it wasn't for me, it was just a hobby, and it wasn't a career. So she asked me what my hobbies and interests were, and I was honest when the lady at SAIT asked that, and I said, like, I like welding, I like cake decorating, realm of hobbies and interests. And she showed me different SAIT programs to align, and the one that stuck was the Welding and Engineering Technology program. There's programs similar to it in the country, but they're comparable depending on what you're looking your outcome to be. But for me, my outcome was to be able to work on pressure equipment, things that I could continuously grow, I guess you could say, over a longer period of time rather than grow really fast over a short period of time in my industry. So I chose to shadow a day in the Welding and Engineering Technology program when I was there, and it was almost like a light switch clicked on. It was very comfortable. They told me all of the options, which I had no idea. Like, as a welding engineering technologist, you could work as a welding inspector, let's say, starting out with your Canadian Welding Bureau certification. And from there, you could stem anywhere from just staying at that level, or you could go further into the engineering technologies where you could work in an office, both office and field work. You can really form the program or form from the program, I'd say, I guess I should say, rather than doing kind of like a quick career and end goal where you're going to semi-max out in your career after, let's say, 10 years. This program and from SAIT really allows you to blossom and find different avenues through different certifications that you take after SAIT if you choose to. It's really, in a way, kind of like a buildable program, and there's no one direct route you have to stay on and take after you graduate, which was for me a huge plus, because then I wouldn't be stuck in a small box when I graduated. I would have a wealth of opportunities and avenues, because I might not like one, then I might love another, right? So I didn't want to be like trapped, say, for 30 years, and after 15 I decided I didn't really love it. You'll never have that with a graduate from this program, because you'll continuously be able to grow like many other industries and blossom from that. And that's the beauty of this program, I think. Definitely.
Right on. Yeah, you've made a lot of great points there. Like you kind of had it in your mind for so long that you wanted to do one specific thing, and once you shadowed and actually got experience, your mind kind of changed and shifted. And so
Exactly.
it's a great thing that that counselor asked and like really honed in on your interests, because now you're doing something that was once a hobby, and now you're actually in the field and can make money from it, which is fantastic, right? So that's great. Yeah, our next question, and you did kind of touch on this, so we'll skip over it, but what made you choose this specific career path? So it was a past hobby, and is there anything else that you'd kind of like to add to that?
I mean, it definitely was a past hobby, like I said, and I know a lot of people who are really good at certain things and have talents in different areas, and I think like, oh, it's a hobby, you can't make a lot of money at it, or you can't make let's say like a certain life for yourself at it, but you really can. Like, I've even outside of my industry, I've noticed people through connections and online taking their ideas and their hobbies and going to a post-secondary and growing with that in some way. And definitely I was not a firm believer that was possible. Before I came to SAIT, I was like, no, I'm not going to make a lot of money, I'm not going to really, I didn't think a lot about my happiness. I thought more of the end of the year value that I made as a salary, which I, now looking back, don't regret, because I did change my mind, but I would think I would have regret just trying to find a job that made the highest salary, but I wasn't really passionate about it, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, and can you just walk us through, just to give everyone kind of an overview of what a day in the life would look like for somebody in your line of work. So kind of morning to night and inside work and outside work. So just give us a good big picture of it.
Yeah, of course. So as a recent grad, I've shadowed some people, and of course, my instructors have told me their stories about in the field, and I've talked to people at shows and at people who come to SAIT to kind of give students a day in the life as well. So I can really only speak on behalf of their experience. But a day in the life for me, an ideal day in the life, or a kind of a regular day in the life of a graduate would be, it could be either daytime shifts or nighttime shifts. We work in Alberta all the time, all day round. So for me personally, if I was to do a daytime shift, you get up, you have an early start. It's not really like a 9 to 5 type of job. You could start as early as like 5 or so in the morning. It would depend on companies, of course, and shift schedules, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen everybody start from like 4 or 5 in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning or 9. So you'd start in the morning. You'd have a list of tasks for that day or projects that you've been working on, because as an inspector or an engineering technologist, a lot of the time your daily job is most likely not going to be just 1 hour or 2 hours and then you never see that piece or job again. It could be a 3-month project that your company or the company you're working for is working on, because it includes so many different people as part of that project as a team, right? And so let's say, for instance, you're working on some type of piping for a customer. People start welding that. You would see the drawings, you would see that kind of purchase or customer's project being built, and you would kind of see it through its way to the exit door or the customer. So you're involved in really every step of the project, but that doesn't mean you're going to be there every second of the day. It might mean you check in 5 times a day, or you check in once a day. It really depends on the company and how they have their procedures set for bringing these things from the starting door to the end door and out to the consumer, really. So your day is going to start early in the morning. You'd have tasks then. It could be paperwork in the office. It could be running around in the field or on site. It could mean coming back to the office, doing some more paperwork, and then going back to site. Or some days you might be fully on site collecting data and information and inspections, and then the next day you bring it back to your office and you analyze that, you write up reports for that. It's really versatile, like I said, like just because this is a day that I've seen on job shadowings or on school trips that we've been on. Every shop that we went to is completely different, and it's really kind of like you can create, companies can create a custom day that works for them and works for their employees. And as a job seeker, you can look into what the company values and how they kind of lay out their days. Some may have safety meetings in the morning, some may have them at the end of the day, and you can kind of customize your workday that way by applying to companies that have interests like that or who set up things like that. A lot of them are very open on their websites, kind of saying what their values are, what their morals, things like that, what their employees do for extracurricular activities through the company. I've seen a lot like that are really great. Hey, we volunteer here with our employees, or hey, we have these benefits, things like that. And it's really amazing. Also, when you're in for interviews, it's a very good chance to ask, hey, what's a day in the life of your company look like?
Right.
Because like I said, it is going to vary from place to place, and it's hard to pinpoint like an exact thing, but it is customizable in the way that you can choose different avenues as you graduate, and you're not stuck to primarily a nighttime job, or if you really didn't like working in the daytime, you're not stuck to a daytime job either, right?
Right. No, that's great. So, and by the sounds of it, it is a mix between office work and you're on site. So it's not, you're not just sitting for 9 hours straight at a computer. There's a little bit of movement. It seems like from a job site to the office, which is a nice mix, right? So
yeah, Exactly. It's a big plus for me that I'm not going to be sitting, like you said, in a chair for 9 hours. That's great some days or for some people, but for me, I'm a very active learner, especially, and I like to be hands-on. So that's another big bonus. It's not just like I see a picture, I can actually go see the project that's being built or something like that where it's tangible, it's in front of you, so you can see and really understand what's happening.
Mhm.
Of course, you will get pictures from time to time, but it's not straight across the broad. It's a little bit of that change, which is nice.
Right, that's fantastic. Yeah. And is there any PPE that you have to wear? So that's personal protective equipment. And is it heavy, or do you not need to wear any of that stuff in your line of work?
Yeah, of course. So, like we talked about, there's a mix of definitely high possibility of office and field work for most graduates, no matter what the avenue. Um, in the program at SAIT, starting from the beginning, you're going to wear PPE when you're in shop classes, which are kind of like the labs that SAIT has that include all the specialty welding equipment, the welders, the ones where you're really doing the hands-on practicing of welding and testing, things like that. You're not in a theory setting per se. And from there, you're expected to wear your steel-toed boots. Um, no big deal there. They are a little bit heavier, but they have many different types that are now approved and regulated to be safe or deemed to be safe, including like steel and then composite. As a female, I was worried about that, thinking that, hey, these boots are going to be really heavy, different body types and different frames, it would affect them differently. So I was able to get a composite shoe that was approved and certified and was great to bring to SAIT. They're a little bit lighter than a steel-toed boot, but equally as safe. I really love them. I've had them for years, so I don't even notice they're on my feet, no different than a runner or anything like that. And they make you even a little bit taller, so you gotta like that. And then other protective equipment, even starting at SAIT, would be like a jeans or like a type of like a Carhartt pant, a work pant, something that sparks would not burn through. Things like leggings, dresses, sweatpants aren't acceptable in shops or on sites. Depending on site, but I can't see where it would be really acceptable to wear like a leggings or a dress. Yeah. So then from there, you're gonna go to your jacket, a shirt like I have on today with short sleeves and a neckline, not really appropriate for a welding shop. You're gonna get sparks, you could get burned, things like that. That's all great. And you're gonna wear like a long sleeve shirt that could be fire retardant, they make them now. Jackets, welding jackets, which are primarily made out of like leather, things like that, are materials that aren't really as flammable as a cotton t-shirt or something would be. And from there, your hair would be back if you have long hair. And then glasses, I wear prescription glasses, so I would be expected to have prescription safety glasses. That would be a safety thing, not being able to see right. And then you don't have glasses, just regular safety glasses that are approved to the standard in Alberta or Canada, for instance. And then as a hat, when you're welding, you can put on a welding beanie. Primarily preference, strongly recommended because it sometimes sparks do hit on your head. And then you'd have your welding helmet if you were welding, or kind of like eye protection, things like that, aside from just the safety glasses, because you don't want to be looking at those bright lights. Even if it's not you welding, it's going to be a person 2 tables down, and your eye is still going to catch that in the peripheral vision. So you definitely have things like that that you wear that are kind of all the time, mandatory to get into that shop to wear. And as I said before, the shop in SAIT is going to align identical. If not, there's going to be more protective equipment on a site because there's different hazards. There's things above your head. Therefore, you might wear a hard hat. Sometimes you have fall arrest equipment on, depending on the job site you're working on or the piece you're working on. If there's a falling hazard, you're going to have to wear that. I've had them on before. They're not really heavy or uncomfortable. They're made to protect you and to not constrict you. So things like a hard hat, very light, you can get them to fit your head. And then of course, at SAIT in the field, you're going to have hearing protection. Just the little tiny earplugs that they have on sites or in offices you can use. You can buy your own if you have that preference. It is usually mandatory as decibels will get over a certain number in some shops, and then that could affect your hearing later in life. So it's always recommended that you have boots, your proper clothing that's going to cover your body completely, so no sparks are really able to get in. Like I said, your eyewear and headwear, rather it be a welding helmet, safety helmet. It varies from project to project, task to task, and then obviously hearing. And things like, it's not really personal protective equipment, but things like taking off rings and jewelry, those are hazards of the job. So those things wouldn't be per se allowed. They're not really there to protect you, but you have to remove them to protect yourself, right?
Right. That's all really good to know. It's very important to stay safe. So thank you for giving us that whole kind of overview.
Of course.
Um, okay, so the next question is, would you be able to, and I'm kind of happy that we talked about this before as well, because you gave me knowledge of it. So now can you share this with everyone? Can you please describe the difference between a welder and a welding technologist?
Of course, yeah. So I definitely looked into the option of becoming just a welder through an apprenticeship program, pre-employment program at SAIT before I chose on the WET program. So the difference is, let's say if you're taking a pre-employment program at SAIT for welding, it's there to take you out of high school or at your point in your life and give you the tools to kind of see like what welding is, kind of like what a day in your life would look like as a welder, and where that, let's say 6, I think, month is program could take you from SAIT. It's a really great option. I've known many people who've taken it. And then there is an apprenticeship program, which you can take after pre-employment welding, where in Alberta you get a blue book, and there's different years of apprentices. So some trades have 4 years, some trades have 3 years of apprenticeship. So during those years, as a welder, you would start as a first-year welding apprentice, and there's an X number of hours that you have to get. And then there's X number of like schooling time that you go to. I think roughly most apprentices go for 8-ish weeks a year. Don't quote me on that. But SAIT does have an apprenticeship program where people come back each year and then they go out after they have that theory knowledge of welding or whatever their trade may be, and they get the hours required to go to the next level of schooling for that 8-week period again, which is really great. And honestly, a big bonus if you don't want to spend 4 years or 2 years in school constantly. It gives you the chance to kind of get the theoretical experience and then go out and get that work experience, which is just, if not more valuable than sometimes in a classroom. That both have their advantages, but depending on the type of learner you are, it can really benefit you greatly by having all those work hours at the end of the day. So as a welder, you'd have to go through that, and after you're done your years of apprenticeship, you'd be able to write your journeyman certificate, or like a red seal. And each province is different, and I haven't looked too much into Alberta just because I didn't take that path. But I do know that you would write your exam at SAIT, and then there is a minimum passing mark, I do believe, of like 60 to 70%, somewhere in there. And then you'd be a journeyman in the welding trade, or a red seal in the welding trade, which, like I said, takes multiple years to get, depending on how you get your hours through work. So you could start somewhere like basically, you obviously start at the bottom, kind of like UVCB floors, doing little tasks for them. You wouldn't be welding right away. And then throughout the years, you build your experience. And then you can write different tickets, whether it be TIG welding, stick welding, MIG welding, and you can specialize in that, and companies will have certain welders sometimes just for certain processes of welding, and that's great. So that's kind of the welding side of things. And if you go into the engineering technologies or the WET program, we are not welders when we graduate. We do not have a red seal in welding. At SAIT, they give you a very generous background on different types of welding. I know a lot of inspection programs in the country do minimal welding in person and in shop. And then you kind of just look at pictures and photos, but SAIT is very generous in the way that they give you kind of like a huge, well-rounded education. Even though you're not going to be certified for welding when you leave SAIT, it gives you the chance, if you really wanted to go to a shop, start an apprenticeship, and get those certifications along with your diploma. There's really no saying you can't, and you'd have the background knowledge. When I went to SAIT, I only knew how to stick weld and MIG weld, so I didn't know anything about oxyacetylene welding, brazing, form of welding, I guess you could say in a way, or TIG welding. I had no idea. I knew they were things, but I had never done them myself. And through the program, I was able to do them. The goal of doing so much hands-on welding during the class time, during the Welding Engineering Technology program, is so you can kind of troubleshoot with a welder after you graduate, potentially to be like, hey, we could do this or we could do that. So you really have an understanding, because it's not fair for an inspector, which let's say is the avenue you take after the Welding Engineering Technology program, to say to a welder who's been welding for 15 years, well, I know how to do this. You're not certified, but you're going to have a greater understanding than just reading about how to do it in a book, right? So in the day of a life, we're not the same people. We do not have the same certifications. The major difference is one is certified to weld, let's say, a said part, and the other person, the engineering technologist or the welding inspector, is kind of the person that inspects that part, makes sure it's safe for a consumer or its end product. And that's kind of how we work hand in hand. We're basically a great tool between engineers who would design the part, make the blueprint, and then there would be welding engineering technologists who are kind of the middleman between the welder and the engineer. Because sometimes people who go to engineering school, which I've looked into myself and interested in, they unfortunately don't always get that hands-on welding experience in a university just because they don't have the facilities. And then there's a gap there between those two people saying, hey, well, I didn't know this wasn't possible. And the welder goes, well, we can't weld like that because we can't move our bodies like that, or it won't work like that. So we're kind of there to bridge the gap, inspect, like I said, endless possibilities. So it's really a good tool to have for a company to have welding engineering technologist or technologist, because we're not really a middleman per se, but really we are, because there's different levels, and it kind of, you're helping both sides. You're helping an engineering standpoint, and you're helping the welder because, hey, I saw that in class once, or hey, I heard that from a friend once, and you're able to visualize better than somebody who unfortunately didn't get the experience firsthand just because it wasn't what their program evolved around, right?
Very interesting. So if we wanted to give it like a very simple analogy, just so people can really put the pieces of who does what together, say that we had, we wanted to weld together a table, for example. And so an engineer designs the table, right? How it's going to kind of look and be, I guess, and how it's going to function properly. And then a welder has to actually weld the pieces together. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they'd be responsible for the engineer, usually depending on what the project is. Let's say the engineer in this case has deemed the type of material they want it made out of a certain grade of steel. The welder would then go to the shop. They would either order the steel or pull it off their inventory, and they make that table to exactly how the blueprint or the drawing says it, that they're provided with. So it can tell them lots of different information. Obviously, it would have the measurements, usually the type of material they want it made out of. Sometimes there'll even be like procedures and things like that that'll be accompanied or even on, saying like, we want this welded at a certain temperature or with a certain process of welding, whether that be, let's say, TIG welding or MIG welding, which should be up to kind of whoever designs that table to specify how they want it built. It might even be a customer telling the engineer, hey, I want it welded with this process only, and doesn't mean it's the only way, it just means it's the way that that drawing states or that blueprint states. And from there, the welder knows how to read those blueprints and things like that, and they then will be able to create that product for the end user, engineer, whomever is looking for the project.
Right. And then where would a welding technologist fit into the mix in that kind of analogy?
Of course, yeah. So once the table is built, and during the kind of process of the table being built, the welding engineering technologist, let's say in this role, he had a job as an inspector for the company. He would be there inspecting the work, making sure that if the table is supposed to be, let's say 4 feet high, that it was actually 4 feet high and not 5 feet or 3.5 feet. He's kind of there to double check that work, make sure that it's correct, or he can even be that branch to say, well, hey, it can't be this height because it would interfere with the chairs that they've already bought. It's not going to work nice. Can we change this? And he or she would see the project through the assembly process and make sure that it's safe to use, things like that. Kind of make sure that what somebody drew or somebody made as an engineer is going to be the most efficient and useful product, really. Like I said, I know I've been told of times, I haven't seen myself yet, but there's been told of times where the drawing says one thing, but in real life, it's not possible to do it that way, or it would be safe to do it that way. And that's hard to see until maybe you're on the ground in front of it, right? A lot of the engineers don't always have the chance to come to the site or something like that. So the inspector could report back to that person saying, hey, like the welder noticed this, and I've noticed it also, that can't work for that one piece, but if we changed it, how should we change it, and how can we make it so we get the same product in the end, same safety, same thing like that, same quality, and obviously have it done the right way, so you're not going to be risking anything.
Okay, yeah, that's very helpful. I think it kind of sets like a very clear picture of the individual role. So thank you for explaining all of that.
Of course, yeah.
And let's see the next question. What would you say the hardest part about your line of work is?
I guess being a new grad, it's hard definitely to say for sure, because I'm sure there's going to be many different roads and many different bumps. At this point, definitely the hardest part of job seeking, or what I've noticed in the program of shadowing, the hardest part of my job, I'm assuming, depending on the person, for me, it was kind of like getting to know all of your knowledge in the way of kind of like knowing where to look for the knowledge. I'm really big on talking to a lot of people and grabbing that knowledge and learning from people who've been in the trade for 40 plus years or even 10 plus years, someone with more experience than myself, and kind of listening to them and listening to their stories. And then trying to figure out, with all that knowledge in my brain, how will my day look, I guess you would say. So I'm sorry, but it is really hard for me to answer this question because I haven't had really those things. But so far, it's just kind of like trying to take all the knowledge we have and trying to see how we can use it effectively, I guess, because I know it is to be used effectively. That's what the program's meant for. That's what I was trained for. But as a person who just kind of come out into the field, it's hard to kind of like, I guess you could say, know how to store that knowledge in a way that, hey, like I'd be worried that can I pull that test that I did way back in school out and use it right here? Like, how do I know when to use it? And I've talked to a lot of employers because we're given this huge pile of knowledge, and then when you go out, you're like, well, am I gonna know everything? Well, of course you're not gonna know everything. That's the point of being a new grad and a new student. You're there to build, you're there to learn with a company. And all of the companies I've talked to, or people I've talked to who've worked for companies, have all been really welcoming and really understanding that new grads are a mountain of knowledge. They don't know everything, but they have so many great things that they do know. And with partnered with somebody with a little bit more experience, they can really blossom and learn. So I guess it's kind of the hardest part currently, maybe not the hardest part of my daily job once I get out there, but currently it's kind of like worrying that all the knowledge I have won't be enough, but you're not expected to know everything, right? As a new grad and before as a graduate, it's kind of like, oh, well, I don't know everything, so why would they want to hire me? But it really is just knowing that you have all these tools and that they're there for you to use when the time comes, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on so many good points in it is kind of a abstract question, the hardest part of your job, because it changes, right? Like exactly what you're saying right now. You're just entering the field, and you, like you said, you have all of this knowledge, but the hardest part of your job currently right now will be different from 5 years from now or 10 years from now, depending on the position that you're in. So I think you answered that perfectly and hit on a lot of points that I don't think we necessarily always hit on, in that kind of question is always evolving, right? You're not, some jobs, I guess, you stay in forever, but a lot of times you have a promotion, or you have a different project that you're working on. So the hardest part of any job can really change, right? So I think you answered that perfectly, especially just for the time that we're in right now. So
yeah, definitely that changes it.
yeah. And then being that the welding field is predominantly male, do you work with a lot of other females, or how does that all look?
Yeah, so coming into the welding field and being in the welding field, I was always kind of surrounded by guys. Even when I did it as a hobby, it was primarily male. There was definitely some females that I saw, but for the most part, that 90 percentile was male. It definitely still is, but things have definitely changed in the last 4 years for sure. I've seen them, maybe just because I've been looking more for different avenues for women in the trades, but it still primarily is male. It doesn't personally bug me. I don't see it as any different than having a 50-50 ratio. It definitely, I think, could present some challenges depending on scenario. Personally, I haven't come across them yet, but I've spoken to women who have. They've been in the industry anywhere from like 2 years to 40 years when things have been evolving, right? But I wouldn't make it a deterrent if the industry you're looking at was primarily one gender and you were of the opposite. It really just kind of like a case-to-case basis. But if it's your dream to pursue, you definitely should. And I have, and I honestly have no regrets doing it. Some of the best classmates I've had and instructors are all male, and they've treated me no different than a male counterpart or peer.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I love that you hit on it shouldn't be a deterrent, right? Because I think even you said that you thought it was kind of originally what boys do, and you would never actually pursue it. So for you to be able to speak to that and say you have no regrets is fantastic. So
Of course.
We're almost at the end of our questions, just a couple more here. So for you personally, do you plan on staying in Alberta and working in Alberta, or do you plan on traveling and being a welding technologist somewhere else, or what does that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, that's definitely evolved as well. Currently, in this day and time, I'm looking to kind of stay in the Western provinces, whether that be Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC. But the Welding and Engineering Technology program, which was recently accredited internationally. So there is a possibility of working really all over the world once you get the right certifications after school, which you have the tools to do now. And I definitely think at some point in my life, I would like to pursue international, but I definitely want to kind of get my feet wet, have some experiences closer to home first in the Western provinces before I go international. Just because I know I'd like to come back into the Canadian welding thing and scene. And the rules are different across the world. Even in the US, they're different than they are in Canada. Canada is one of the highest standards of welding and welding inspection. And I would like to kind of learn from one of the top safety and like top producers before I kind of went abroad to do it. Just so I knew that I'd be coming back to sometimes even higher expectations than certain countries, just so that employers would know that I could know that the Canadian law may be different than the US law, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Great, yeah, that's wonderful. And then if you had to summarize like maybe 5 skills that somebody should have or would be helpful to becoming a welding engineering technologist, what would that be?
So definitely kind of, I've learned it's really a mindset thing. I've had some bumps in my schooling in certain classes I didn't excel at. And once I changed my mindset that, hey, I can do this, the skill of having like determination really helped me. Also, kind of, I noticed I've seen different types of learners, but being a hands-on learner, that was a skill that really helped me. Being able to have things in my hands, look at them, and kind of judge and inspect them was really helpful for me. And then other skills would be kind of personable, like as a welding inspector or welding engineering technologist, you're going to be going out and you're going to be talking to multiple different people in the company. You're going to be working on a team basis, and you really have to know how to work with people, different types of people, and be positive through that, right? And for other skills, I mean, it really depends. I'm really into detail. That really helps me when I'm studying or I'm doing some kind of paperwork for it. I find that it makes it easier for other people to read it because everybody kind of formats their reports differently. Different companies do that. But if you have kind of like a standardized thing, and it's not just a pile of rough papers, it really helps the next person who's viewing that or looking over that to be able to read it and understand your frame of thinking. Definitely. So those would kind of be like 4 or 5 of the skills that I would say would help, but it would really depend on person to person because all skills are valuable. It's just how you apply them.
That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, I think that's all the questions for me. Is there any kind of last minute thoughts that you think would be very helpful to somebody in high school thinking about this kind of career path? Is there anything that you wish that you would have known that you'd like to share?
I guess I kind of did touch on it at the first of this interview, saying that I thought for like 3.5 years that I was going to be a one career track, and it changed. So definitely just never close any doors or possibilities. I'm so glad that I didn't not take certain classes in high school, like for instance math, because I really didn't like it, just because I thought that I wouldn't need it, because that would have closed off a lot of doors for me. You use things like that, even physics in everyday life in welding. It might not be as hard as what you're doing right now in high school, but there is some form of that, and you'll become comfortable with the level of it and not even notice you're doing it in your day-to-day tasks. Yeah.
Right. No, that's great. And maybe that's actually another question. How much math do you need as a welding engineering technologist or just even a welder?
So for a welding engineering technologist, the program through SAIT has 2 calculus courses. They are the intro to calculus, so they're nothing too extravagant, but they're definitely still at the calculus level. And then you do different things like statics, statistics, which are forms of math, physics, things like that. And the beautiful thing is in the program, they really build everything around them. So it's not a random question. I know in high school for myself, a lot of my math questions in the textbook could be like so random, wouldn't make sense, couldn't be applied. And I really struggled with that. I wasn't the best math student in school. I was just average. And when I came to SAIT, I graduated with like A's in calculus and everything, which was not expected at all because they applied it to something that I was interested in and I was able to understand it, which I found really helpful. So as a welding engineering technologist, your daily math, you're going to be using it, but you're going to be comfortable with the amount that you have. It's not going to be like a page long question every time. There may be times when it is, but it's really not going to be like a deterrent at the end of the day. or it shouldn't be. And then a welder, they use math constantly as well, trigonometry, things like that, because they're always doing measurements and doing angles and measuring angles. Same for an inspector, you'd be checking all those, so you have to know how to get those answers. So there definitely is. It's nothing too scary. Like I said, I was never a top math student, or I never loved math. So if I can do it, definitely anybody can. And it's not a scary amount. The positives of the job outweigh the small little tasks like a calculation for me.
Totally. Yeah. And that's such a good point too. When something is applied to something that we're interested in, all of a sudden it kind of seems like the answers just come to us a little bit easier, or maybe we're more willing to put in the time to actually study because we are interested, right? So that was
Exactly.
wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all for us. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. And I mean, I learned so much. So I'm sure that all of these high school students will as well. So I greatly appreciate it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Allison.
Okay, thanks. We'll talk soon.
Bye.